Hi everyone and welcome. Wallsend Baths is often a popular topic. So many people remember going there as children, either on their own or with the school. I remember going with the school with the intention of learning to swim. However, I sank, swallowed lots of water, and that was it. Scared me for life, and all these years later I still can't swim. So this little video is a bit of the history of Wallsend Baths. It's worth noting that originally the baths simply meant a place for people to get washed and not a swimming pool. The pool part of the plans came much later than the early plans for basic baths for washing. The earliest information I can find about the baths dates back to 1893. It had been discussed before that, but I couldn't find any details prior to the said 1893, and at that time the Wallsend Trades Council thought that baths and washhouses for Wallsend would be of great benefit to the town. However, the chairman of Wallsend Town Council felt that it wasn't a good idea, as it was stated that the town at the time was a widely scattered place. The town was growing, but it was not as densely populated as it would become in later years, and they felt that there wasn't a good place to position the baths and washhouses that would be easy for everyone to get to, and they also said that other places that had baths and washhouses were not really used and seen as white elephants. The next bit of information I found was from 1899, when Mr. Richardson Dees said that he felt that public baths were very much needed in Wallsend. He felt this was something that the council should get behind and approve. He was not so keen on the idea of washhouses, as he felt this was something that was no longer needed, as most homes built by then had washhouses in them. However, less than 5% of homes had baths. He had done some research and was of the opinion that North Shields, Byker and Elsick public baths were very well used and paid for themselves. Mr. G. A. Allen agreed and said he felt that public baths were very much needed in a town where most of the population were working people with no access to baths. Mr. O'Hanlon also agreed and said Wallsend needed public baths as cleanliness was very important. The council agreed to look into the matter and check on building costs. Having not really found any more information until 1906, it's hard to say what happened to the council's research and the plans of Mr. Dees, but it is safe to say that no public baths were built at that time. By 1906, the plans had moved forward to including a swimming pool as well as the public baths. Again, it was thought that they would be of great benefit to the town, but there was a worry that the council were already overstretched with other current plans at the time, so it seems it again went on the back burner. One amusing statement made in 1906 in favour of the public baths was that water from the baths after use would cleanse the sewers and free them of foul air. It seems it would take until 1911 before the plans would finally be accepted for the baths, and they would also include the building of a fire station next to the police courts. Some minor issues still arose. At one point, the local government board objected to the cost for building, actually claiming it was too low. However, this was finally agreed to and building work began. The building work was completed in mid-May of 1912. The architects were Liddell and Brown of Newcastle, and the builders were W. Franklin and Son of Newcastle, and the engineer was Mr. T. D. Hall of Wallsend. The Wallsend Baths were said to be one of the largest in the country at the time, at 118 feet long and 56 feet wide, with galleries capable of accommodating 700 spectators. It's worth a quick mention that some articles stated to have been 120 feet long and 60 feet wide. The pool itself was 100 feet long by 30 feet wide, with a depth that went from 3 feet at the shallow end to 6'9" at the deep end. Shower baths with attendants were in place at either end of the pool, which was called a pond in 1912, and people had to use these before being allowed to enter the swimming pool itself. In addition to the pool, there were 8 men's slipper baths, some with showers, and 4 women's slipper baths. There were also Russian baths and vapor baths, with separate entrances for both men and women. The baths were officially opened on the 12th of June of 1912 by Alderman J. O'Hanlon. Crowds of Wallsenders came to the opening, and it was said that they tested the bath's capacity for spectators to the limit. At the opening of the pool, Jack Hatfield swam 300 yards in 3 minutes and 40 seconds in a small swimming display. Jack, who was around 19 years old at the time, went on to win 2 silver and 1 bronze medal in the Summer Olympics that same year. The baths were built on land leased to the council for 999 years, although I have not found any details of what the cost of the lease would be. The total cost for building of the baths was £9,000. I believe this did not include the building of the fire station and the acquiring of 1 fire engine, which had been estimated in 1911 at a cost of around £3,000 in total. Mr. M. L. Jones, swimming instructor for Newcastle Education Committee, was appointed as the first manager of Wallsend Baths. It seems it was a very popular place, and by October of 1912 the first swimming gala was held, and some short time later the baths boasted several swimming clubs. In 1934 a letter was sent to the local paper requesting that the baths were to remain open for the winter months. However, the council, having received a petition about it closing, did a trial and found that it was a failure, so the baths remained closed for the winter months. By the 1950s it was felt an extension to the baths to include a learner's pool, what we called the little pool, was needed. Somewhat similar to the issues with the building of the main pool itself, this ended up taking several years to be agreed to, which finally happened in 1960, and the extension and little pool was opened in 1963 at a cost, with other alterations included, of £73,000, a massive difference to the original building costs of £9,000 in 1912. The extension also included new changing rooms and toilets for both the old and the new pool, and lockers for 72 women and 72 men for the little pool, and 152 men and 140 women in the big pool. The little pool was said to be 50 feet long and 25 feet wide, 2.5 feet deep in the shallow end and rising to 4 feet deep in the deep end. Even before it was officially opened, it was said to have greatly increased the use of the baths. By the 1970s, the baths were starting to get a little tired and dated and in need of some repairs. By 1979, it was thought that they may have to close completely, as the cost for repairs was standing at £116,000. But the work did go ahead, and the baths reopened in the early 1980s. A new suspended ceiling was installed to help improve the heating, and I have recently read that in around 1984 part of the ceiling fell into the pool when it was in use, but that luckily no one was hurt. Sadly, as is often the case with old buildings, especially used in such a way as this one was, more work was needed by the late 80s to maintain the building, at an estimated cost of £1.5 million to bring it up to standard. However, government cutbacks at the time meant that the costs could not really be justified, and despite public and some council opposition, including one councillor stating that the pool had survived the Depression and 2 world wars, so surely it could survive now too, sadly the pool finally closed its doors for good in the winter of 1990. At the time there were no plans for another pool to be built in Wallsend. This did not happen until 2010, when Hadrian Leisure Centre opened, built in the grounds of the Burnside School. The building itself, Wallsend Baths, which is Grade 2 listed since 1986, stood empty for several years before being sold and totally renovated inside and out, and the exterior, which had been changed somewhat over the years, was returned back to how it would have looked when the baths was first built in 1912. It is now used as offices. The 1963 Little Pool extension was demolished and houses now stand where that once stood. I hope you've enjoyed this little story of the history of the ever-popular Wallsend Baths. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you all again very soon.